Hello, Aubrey. How are you today?
I'm great, Lindsay. How are you?
Good. Aubrey, has anything funny happened to you lately?
Yes, just this morning. So today is April Fool's Day, April 1st. We record a little early. And this morning, my son, before I even realized it was April Fool's Day, I had made these chocolate croissants. Well, Trader
Uh-huh.
Joe's made them, but I baked them, and there were
Okay.
only four. So I
Yeah.
told my kids, if you get up and get ready for school quick, come down and you can have a whole croissant. If not, I'm going to eat half of it.
Uh-huh.
And my son was like, "Mom, you can have half of mine." And I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, that's so sweet." And then he said, "April Fools."
Oh.
And I was like, "Oh, that's a good one."
Oh, that is a good one.
He
Good
got me.
one.
Really good April Fool's joke.
Yes.
I did
Yes,
not
I
see it
love that.
coming.
Yeah, and I love how you brought us into your morning, your April Fool's morning in your kitchen, right? By using a little bit of reported speech there. That was interesting.
Exactly. Yes. You guys
Mhm.
probably noted it. We do this in English when we're telling a story. We often will report dialogue and thoughts, but
Yes.
we're not saying things word for word. We use
Mhm.
specific phrases and we
Yeah.
change our intonation to bring people in to make it engaging and interesting. We
Yes.
recently promised a follow up on this when it came up on an episode of the podcast.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Guys, go ahead and hit the follow button so you don't miss any of our episodes here on All Ears English. A lot of times, episodes connect to each other, and you don't want to
Yes.
miss any of them to get the full teaching, right? To get exactly what you need to connect with native speakers. All right.
Exactly, right. So,
Yes.
first of all, just how important narrating thoughts and speech is, right? This is
Hmm.
B2, C1 skill, but you have to practice it. You have to be thinking about it so that you're not sort of being formal and saying, like, I said this and then they said this. That's not what you want to do. You want to
Yes.
add interest and engagement.
I love that. And this is a skill that we explicitly teach, I know, at least in the C1 course, right, Aubrey? In
Yes,
our C1 fluency
exactly.
course? Yeah.
Yes,
So,
and then we
mhm.
see the assignments where students are doing it and then they're using it in open conversation club. They
Oh,
sound
so good.
so native and natural when they're doing that. I love it.
Yes, I love it. Guys, go over to allearsenglish.com/C1 to get into the C1 course to explicitly build this skill, right? We give you the step by step and lots of practice inside the course, but today we're just touching on it just a little bit. All right.
Exactly. We're just kind of
Yeah.
showing how it works. It makes stories more interesting. It brings the listener in as if they were there, as if they experienced it with you.
Hmm.
But intonation really matters. The phrasing you use really matters. So we're going to give a few examples today.
Yeah.
This will be really fun.
Yeah.
Lindsay and I both prepared a couple of very short stories of crazy or weird things that have
Weird.
happened to us in the past. We're going
Yes.
to use this and then we'll point out some of the of this speech narration, of this reported speech and thoughts that we use.
Yes,
You
I
want to
like the
start us,
term
Lindsay?
weird and wacky, Aubrey.
Weird and
Weird and
wacky.
wacky. The weird and
Yes.
the wacky. Here we go. Yeah, so this past weekend, Aubrey, I was in Venice Beach, California with my family, and we decided we know LA, but we could know Venice Beach more. So we thought, let's do a food tour. So we did the
Nice.
food tour. We toured the canals, we ate burgers and acai bowls, all the California Venice Beach things. And we come to the end of the tour, and I'm thinking, okay, this has been a great tour, but not much has happened. All of a sudden, I look across the street and there's Billie Eilish, who I'm not a big Billie
What?
Eilish person, but she was there. She's walking down the street and there are people following her saying, I love you, Billie, right?
Oh,
And I
yeah.
thought nothing else weird or strange or interesting could possibly happen today. And then I turn my head as I'm eating my ice cream at the end. And there's a guy with a chicken on his lap in jeans. The chicken is in blue jeans. I
What? The
looked at the
chicken
tour
had
guide. I
jeans
said, "That's
on.
crazy." She tried to snap a photo, but even weirder, the owner of the chicken refused to let her take a photo. He actually got upset with her. And that is just the vibe of Venice Beach. There's
Oh,
weird,
that's
wacky things going
amazing.
on, but people are also strange in Venice Beach. And
Yes.
so I thought I'm definitely coming back here soon.
I love that story so much. I'm so happy we're doing this episode because I had not heard that story and that is so funny. But you guys have got to listen back if you missed it. Lindsay used several reported speech and thoughts. There's like, and then I thought nothing else weird is going to happen
Yeah,
today.
yeah,
And then what you said to the tour guide, right? I
yeah. Yes.
said, "What is happening?
Yes.
This is how you brought me and all of our listeners into the story." I felt like I was there at Venice Beach with you, looking at this chicken in blue jeans.
I passed off Venice Beach just to be kind of it's a little like rough around the edges, Venice Beach, and I thought,
Yeah.
oh, it's okay. I know Venice Beach, but then I had a chance to really dive deeper into Venice Beach,
Mm.
and I recommend it. I
Oh, yeah.
recommend getting into it if you're next time you're in LA. Interesting place with a lot of
Yes.
cool
Take your
history.
rollerblades. I rollerbladed at Venice Beach. It was so fun. There
Yeah.
are characters
Yes.
there. I
Yes.
loved it.
Aubrey, did you rollerblade in Venice Beach in the first wave of blading or the second wave?
I'm not
Because
sure. It was, let me say, it was probably like
oh,
1997.
first wave then.
That's
First wave.
probably
Okay.
first wave. Okay. I don't know.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, because it was popular in the 90s and then it came back, right? Yes.
Gotcha. I was the
Okay, Aubrey.
OG
Yeah,
rollerblader at
yeah,
Venice
yeah,
Beach.
same here, same here. I remember in high school, but I'm excited to hear your story and let's see what kind of reported speech we get here.
Yes. Okay. This happened when I was 18. I was working in Jackson Hole for the summer, and we had gone to a party in Driggs over a mountain pass. And we were headed back to Jackson at like 2 a.m. And
Okay.
there were four of us in the car. We're driving, and it got extremely foggy on the mountain. And
Mhm.
we had to go so slowly because if we didn't, the drop off of the cliff is right there. We would just
Ooh,
drive right off the mountain. So we're going
no.
like 2 miles an hour. My friends are like, "Can we go faster, please?" And
Uh-huh.
we're like, "No, we can't." All of a sudden, out of the fog comes this woman. She had blood all down her shirt, hitting
Oh.
the passenger side window and screaming. We all
Whoa.
screamed. We were like, "What is happening? Are we in a horror movie?"
Yeah.
It turned out that she had been in an accident and she had been, injured. We stopped and let her in, and it was so crazy. Like I was
Whoa.
seriously in Five Nights at Freddy's. I don't know, a scary
Mhm.
movie. To have something
Mhm,
like that
mhm.
happen in real life, we
Yes.
were just like, "Are we taking crazy, crazy pills?
Yeah.
What's is this real life? This is crazy."
I love that. It reminds me of it gives me kind of Scream vibes or Scary Movie
Yes,
vibes, right? High school kids kind of getting
totally.
into trouble.
I've seen things like that in the movies, but not in real life. That was the only time something like that's ever happened.
That's
It was crazy.
crazy. Oh my gosh. And I love the reported speech that you use. The trend I'm hearing is that we use a lot of we're like, we were just like, and that
Yep,
is a way that we pull people in. We ask our students in the course to do that too. We ask them to submit their reported speech in the community, right, Aubrey? And we hear a
exactly.
lot of that. We were like, I was like, we're just like, right?
Yes, and you have
Um,
other options. You could say, "I thought." You could say, "I said," even if you're not quoting yourself example or exactly, and we'll
mhm,
say, "I
mhm.
was all," which
I
means
was
I was like,
all.
"I was all, oh my goodness," right? These are all the different phrases, speech markers that you can use that
Yes.
really draw someone into the story, and even if you said, "I said," we know it's not gonna
Mhm.
be word for word. We're just
Yes.
reporting speech generally.
Yes, I love that. You also said, what is happening?" I think you said, "I thought, what is happening?"
I
Right?
do this,
So
right?
what
We were like, "What is happening?"
happening? And I think we actually taught that in a recent episode on All Ears English just a few weeks ago, Aubrey. I think you
Yes,
and
a
I
lot of
taught
these
that.
phrases. What is
Mhm.
happening? Am I taking crazy pills? Is
Yeah.
this real life? A few of
Yes.
those that I used are in a recent episode. Scroll back
Yeah.
if you missed it and hit follow if you're missing these great episodes.
I love it. Shall we go for another round? Shall we
Yes,
do it?
Lindsay, let's hear one of your
Okay.
other stories.
All right, Aubrey. So here we go. So we'll bring our listeners back to 2017. I was hiking the Inca Trail with my partner. It had been a 4-day hike, and we were camping at about 11,000 feet with a small group of about 5 of us on a tour, a hiking tour where you carry everything, all that good stuff. So we camped at about 11,000 feet, and everything felt normal. I didn't feel dizzy or anything, but as soon as I wake up in the morning, I feel my rings feel a little tight, right? Something weird is
Mm.
going on. My rings feel tight. Something doesn't feel quite right, but I just brush it off and I think, oh, no big deal. Let's go have breakfast. So I get out of the tent and I walk down to where the coffee's brewing and the fire's going, and people are like, whoa, who are you? What happened to your face? Right? What happened to your face?
Oh,
So it
no.
turns out my face had gotten super swollen, and I tried to look in whatever mirror I could find, and I was like, oh my gosh, who am I? And I can actually show you for our YouTube listeners what my face looked like.
Oh,
And
if
can you
it's
see that,
oh
Aubrey?
my goodness,
Yes,
Lindsay.
this was me
Wow. You
in
guys
the
have to go
morning.
and watch YouTube. I cannot believe that's you.
And I thought to
Wow.
myself, was it the wine? Because the night before we had been up drinking
Mm.
wine with this couple from, I think from Brazil, and the olives, wine and olives. And I thought must have been the wine and olives, the salt. I'm not sure, but I was looking like another person. It was wild,
Yeah.
Aubrey. Yeah.
Wow. Did you find out what caused it? Was it allergies? I
I
mean, it
don't
could
really
be
know. It was
anything.
some
No.
kind of edema. It was some kind of
Oh,
swelling, I figured, from the altitude, but it took a few days to
my
go down.
goodness. Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
it took a few days to go down, so I looked like that for a couple of days. It was crazy.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh my goodness. And wow, you really did bring us into the story
yeah.
when it was reported speech of what people first were saying and thinking when
Mhm.
they saw you, right?
Yes.
People were like, "What happened to your face?" And if you think about the other ways you could say this, if you just say like, "People saw me and were surprised to see my
Yeah.
face looking like that," or if you report
Not as interesting, right?
not as
Yeah.
interesting the way you say it when you report speech and thoughts.
Mhm.
It's to bring people in, to make it more interesting,
Yes.
to make them feel like they were there, and it does
Yes.
that. It's so
Yes. We
crazy.
can it's so funny. It's the same material, it's the same event, but the way we tell it really matters, right?
Totally. Yes, it
Yeah.
does. And you wanna
Mhm.
be a good storyteller. This is one of
Yes.
the most important things about learning a language. I feel like
Yes.
I'm so close or maybe just barely there in Spanish, and it's so fun that I could
That's
tell a
amazing.
story, entertain a
Yes.
crowd. I love it.
I love it. Alright, do you wanna tell one more story,
Yes, I
Aubrey?
have one
Yeah.
more quick one.
Okay.
So when I was in college, we were at a park at like 9:40 PM just hanging out, and the
Mhm.
second it hit 10 PM, all these cop cars show up and just gave us all trespassing violations. We
Oh.
were like, "Are you serious? What did we do?" We had no idea. Turns out the park closes at 10 and people had been graffitiing the week before.
Oh,
So they
no.
had just decided right at 10, anyone who's here is getting a trespassing violation. It was a misdemeanor.
Ugh.
And we were all like 19-year-old kids doing nothing. We were just sitting on like the playground equipment. And they at 10 PM, that's not even late. It was the
That's
craziest thing. We were
crazy.
all mind boggled and we were like calling parents, "Mom,
Oh.
what do I do?" It was so nuts.
Oh my god, I love how in that story you quoted your call with your mom, you know what I mean?
Totally.
You really brought me into it, right? And I also heard we were like, "Are you serious?" And your tone of voice
Mm,
really changed there, right? It brought me in, and I can't believe you got a
yes.
misdemeanor, Aubrey,
I
that's
know. It
crazy.
was crazy. Luckily, I was my friend who also got this misdemeanor. Her uncle was a lawyer, and he got us what's called a plea in abeyance,
Okay,
which they'll often give to young people who really
yeah,
weren't doing anything wrong. And it's 6 months of probation. And if nothing happens that, you don't get in any trouble, not even a speeding ticket
yeah,
for 6 months, then it goes away and
yeah,
they like wipe it off your record. And so
yeah,
luckily I was able to do that. So the
and I bet you
misdemeanor
were
was cleared off
driving
my record.
under the speed limit for a month, right?
Absolutely. I was, like, being
6 months.
so careful
Yeah.
because I really didn't want I was I was so crazy, so crazy.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I love it. 4 great stories, but honestly, the fact is here, Aubrey, we don't need to be comedians. We don't need to have this wild, crazy life to be interesting, right? I think that's
Yeah.
my takeaway.
These are stories that could happen to anyone, right? It wasn't
Mhm.
that hilarious, but interesting, right? You can tell these
Yes.
stories in a very interesting way,
Yes.
and I have definitely listened to a story from someone who had something happen to them that was more interesting than the 4 stories we told, but if
Mhm.
they're not using reported speech and they're kind of being boring about it, it doesn't feel as interesting. It was like,
Yeah,
not that exciting."
it's like a waste of material, right? It's a
Yes,
waste
right?
of your life in a
Wasted
sense. So,
opportunity.
yes, I love it. So good. Okay, Aubrey, we are back. Let's get into a role play now to show our listeners another example.
Yes, and this actually happened, and it
Okay.
happened while I was doing the plea in abeyance. So I was, like, on
Oh, no.
probation, and I was really being very careful so that
And
when this happened, I was like, "What is happening? No, I that's"
okay, we're getting to
So
know
that'll
you
give you a
quite
little
well here
context
on the
here.
podcast.
But this is how it can happen more as a conversation. It doesn't have to be a
Okay.
story one person's telling,
Yeah.
right? I'm
Yes.
still telling a story, but sometimes there's a little more back and forth with it, which is also fun.
I love that angle. All right, let's see what this looks like.
All right, I'll start us out. I was almost arrested once at the Salt Lake City airport. It was crazy.
Are you serious? What happened?
We were just minding our business, waiting for a friend's flight to land, and this woman yells, "Security!" And a security guard comes over.
What comes over to you?
Yes. And we were all, "What is happening?"
I bet. Why did they call them over?
Well, apparently, my friend was absent-mindedly peeling the paint on the window frame,
Oh.
and this lady was like, "Arrest these girls for destruction of property." And we were like, "Are you serious?"
This is nuts. What happened?
The security guard called over a manager who was like, "No, this paint was already peeling." Our friend's flight landed, and she arrived in the middle of it and was like, "What is going on?"
That is so bonkers, Aubrey.
Yes, this lady was bananas. She was like, "I can't believe you're gonna let these girls get away with this." And we were just like, okay, lady, like she needs a hobby."
Oh,
It
one
was
needs a hobby. Yes,
crazy.
yes. Wow, okay, and that was during the 6-month period.
Yes, which made it so much worse. I was like, "No, no, please, like, no."
Yeah. After
I
this
probably
happened,
would have, like, left her, like, fed her to the wolves, threw her under the bus, and ran
yeah,
if
I wouldn't have left the house after that happened,
I
right? I mean,
know,
that's
right?
something's
Well, it was
going
I mean,
on.
we were picking up a friend at the
Yeah,
airport, minding
yeah.
her own business. I didn't even notice, but she was just kind of, like, picking at the paint that was peeling in the window. Imagine
Yeah, I mean,
that.
sometimes you can absent-mindedly be doing something, right?
Yes,
Not even
right? She
thinking
didn't
about it
mean
if you have
to.
nervous habits maybe. Yeah, mhm.
Destruction of property? Really? What?
Wow. So what did
Yeah.
we use here? What did you use here to report the event?
Yeah, so the first instance is when I talk about what this woman said. I said, "This woman yells, 'Security!' And then the guards come over, and then I say, 'We were all, what is
Yeah.
happening?'" So there
Yes.
are options. I could say, "We were like, what is happening?" Or "We thought, what is
What's
happening?" Or "We
happening?
said," right? Lots of options.
Mhm, or we might stick in just and say, "We were just like, what is happening?"
Mhm.
And I want our listeners to notice that there are times here where we move into the present tense. This is not what today's episode is about, using the present tense in reported speech, but we do it, right, Aubrey? We'll talk about that another day.
Yes. Yes, that would be
Mhm,
another good episode that when we're telling a story, we'll move from past to present because we're
mhm.
bringing the person into the story, and once they're there, we start using present tense as if it's
Yes.
happening as we speak.
But then we also seamlessly move back into the past tense
Exactly.
sometimes and then back into
Exactly.
the present. So it's really
Mhm.
dynamic.
Totally.
Yeah.
And
And
then I
then
said, "This lady was like, 'Arrest these girls for destruction of property,'"
yeah,
which is maybe not exactly what she said, but,
right, right.
basically
More or
reported speech,
less. More or
and
less.
we were
It's okay
like,
to embellish a
"Are
little bit.
you serious?"
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, this we do exaggerate, we embellish, it makes the
Mhm.
story more interesting, but this is basically what was said. It was crazy.
Yeah, and then you said the security guard called over a manager who was like, "No, this paint was already peeling." Okay? So again, more he was like, right?
Mhm.
He said, essentially it means he said. Okay.
Exactly, and then our
Mhm.
friend's flight landed, our friend arrives and was like, "What is going on?" And
I
this might have
know.
just been her face. She probably didn't say anything, but
Right.
she, like, would walk up and see, like, this lady yelling and the security guards and we're there, and she just probably would have this look on her face like, "What
Mhm.
is going on?"
That is huge. Oh, this has been a really fun episode today with 4 great stories plus a great role play. Aubrey, what is the main point? Where do we want to leave our listeners today?
Yeah, just stories can be so fun and interesting, but reported speech and thoughts it really improve stories a thousandfold. They can be
Yes.
kind of boring and blah and be kind of flat and not
Mhm.
land. But if you're practicing the intonation, notice our intonation and using
Mhm.
these phrases, I was all, I thought I was like, then
Yes.
you can really tell engaging stories.
Yeah, and it's fun. You can get in that. Clearly, if you're telling this story, this experience meant something to you. So for people to know you better and to understand who you are as a person, right? You need to pull them in, but they need to listen and want to listen. So this is how we do it, right?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Oh, I'm
Good stuff.
excited for you guys to tell a story and use reported speech. So
All
fun.
right. Great stuff today, Aubrey. We'll see you on the next episode.
See you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.